Good afternoon. Hi, it's Dr. Katie here, and today I'm just going live to talk to you all about coconut oil. I don't know about you, but my weekend, Friday started and I wasn't really thinking too much about coconut oil, and by the time Monday morning came around, my news feed was full, totally full of people and comments and articles all about how coconut oil is so bad for you. And I saw headlines saying it's as bad as butter, it's as bad as beef fat, and it's very unhealthy and you shouldn't eat it. And I was like, well, this is kind of a little different. Hey, thanks for joining. Nice to see you, Marion. And so basically I was like, what is going on with all these headlines about coconut oil? And so I wanted to get to the bottom of where this hype came from, and also what other research is out there on coconut oil, and help maybe present a bit of a balanced view for you today so you can sort through if and how you want to incorporate coconut oil in your diet. So I'm hoping to take your questions. So as I chat, if you have questions about it, throw them up in the comment box. I want to keep this useful for you. And so to fill you in on what actually happened, the background story here is that the American Heart Association released what they call a presidential advisory on saturated fats, which is just this big document warning that they make about heart health. And their warning was that Americans are consuming too much saturated fat, and that this is very bad for your health because it increases your LDL cholesterol. And the reason why coconut oil was included in this, or people started talking about it, is that coconut oil was brought up as a source of saturated fatty acids, which it is. Coconut oil contains up to 80% saturated fatty acids, which is more than butter and more than beef, and that's a lot. That's a high amount of saturated fats. And so, why is this a problem? So saturated fat in general, when you consume it, one of the things it does is it increases something called LDL, which is a type of cholesterol. And these are generally called the bad cholesterols. And so a lot of people, specifically heart health people, are concerned with LDL cholesterol and what that numbers look like and how to avoid those being high. Now, like a lot of things, the reality of numbers when you start looking at an individual level is a lot more complicated. Your LDL cholesterol level is probably not as important as you've been maybe told that it has been, and certainly as the American Heart Association likes to play that it is. On an individual level, what matters more is actually the quality of the lipoproteins. And so that's something that's more difficult to measure. It's not a standard lab test, and so it's not something that we usually talk about. But one of the differences is in different types of saturated fats, you might get different styles of lipoproteins. And this is true in the case of coconut oil. And so I'm just going to step back for a second and make sure that we know what we're talking about when we're talking about saturated fats. So saturated fats, I'm a bit of an organic chemistry nerd, and so what it basically means is that there's no room for more hydrogen atoms on that fat. There's no double bonds. It's been saturated with hydrogen, and that's where that comes from. And saturated fatty acids, the opposite of that, or the difference with that, is an unsaturated fatty acid. And a lot of nutritional requirements, or a lot of conversations around nutrition, encourage people to have unsaturated fatty acids alongside or instead of saturated fatty acids. Is that clear? Is everyone understanding the difference between saturated and unsaturated fatty acids? If you're confused, just throw a comment up and I'll be able to see that and respond. If not, I'll just move on. Okay, so the difference between the saturated, or the reason why people like plant oils, and you hear that oils are better than fats for you, is because plant oils in general have more unsaturated fatty acids than animal products. And this is why people are saying, you know, olive oil is good for you, canola oil is good for you, all these different oils as opposed to fats, because they have more unsaturated fatty acids. But another way to tell the difference with that is whether they're a solid or a liquid at room temperature. And so coconut oil, even though it's from a plant, is pretty solid at room temperature. It's liquid at body temperature. And that's because of the saturation. That's because of the saturated fatty acids that it's that solid. And so there is a lot of saturated fat in coconut oil. But the question becomes, does that really matter? And I'm going to encourage right now the fact that context within your diet matters. And so normally when we're looking at saturated fatty acids and the concern in the diet, it's because the saturated fatty acids are consumed with often processed carbohydrates. So think of your typical hamburger that's got a high amount of saturated fatty acids from the beef, and it's also got that bun, that starchy carbohydrate without much fiber. The cardiovascular profile and the risks associated with that type of consumption is very different than if you're having a scoop of coconut oil that you've used to saute vegetables, which are high in fiber and high in very heart-promoting antioxidants. And there's a very different cardiovascular profile when you consume saturated fatty acids depending on what you consume it with. So even within, you know, choosing beef or choosing butter, it's more important that you're pairing those with real whole foods, with vegetables, than it is to avoid them altogether. It's more important to look at the whole diet and what else is being included than to focus in on one specific food, like let's say coconut oil, and say, well, you have saturated fats, so you're bad for me and I shouldn't eat you. I also just wanted to take a moment to talk about the concept of labeling foods as good and bad. And I find this to be a very difficult thing in practice. Is quite harmful, and it can be harmful for our health in a number of ways. When we start identifying foods as good and bad, then we tend to put those qualities on ourselves when we eat those. I ate good food today, so I'm a good person. I ate bad food today, I was so bad. And these sort of moral judgments being placed on food and then on ourselves do us a disservice. It takes away from our enjoyment and proper digestion of our foods. It's bad for our mental health. And while there are definitely healthier and less healthy food choices, things that are better for us, it's always important to consider those on an individual case and also in context of a full diet. And so, is coconut oil bad for you? I think at this point in time, it's pretty clear that I think it's not bad for you, but that it's important to realize that yes, it is a source of saturated fat, and that when you're including fat in your diet, you want to include fat from a variety of sources. So including olive oil in your diet as well as coconut oil. And realizing that no one food is going to magically improve your health or your cardiovascular profile that much. And so having sources of fish, having sources of coconut oil in moderation, having olive oil, those other fatty acids are going to do different things and really balance out the oils in your body and bring out the benefits of all components. And so I hope that that answers most of your questions about olive oil I'm an olive oil fan, I got a little sidetracked there, about coconut oil and some of the headlines that have happened today. And so if you have any other questions about coconut oil, leave them in the comment box, or if there's another nutrition topic you'd like me to answer in a video, I would be happy to do that. So thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great afternoon.